guys, here we are to start off today's video. Now, once again, guys, if you ever find value in any of these updates when we're talking about any analysis, you guys want to see how I'm investing, you guys can always check out the links in the description to go ahead and sign up for my private group. That's where you're going to see anything that I'm doing with my money and portfolio. But regardless, leave a like, comment, and subscribe if you like this content. What we're going to be covering today is going to be the Bitcoin price, talking about this breakout that we're seeing right now. Massive green buy candle stepping in here. We're also going to be coming over here and looking at the total market cap, analyzing a resistance level that I think is important that everybody needs to know about. We're going to be coming in and looking at the altcoin total market cap, analyzing how we've already seen continuation out of the breakout since my last video, what this means for where we're going to end up seeing the altcoins rally before we end up seeing any sort of correction. And then we're going to be wrapping up talking about the altcoin god itself, and that's Dogecoin. Anytime we see altcoins run, it's usually fueled around Dogecoin doing the leading, and talking a little bit about what that means moving forward. Now guys, right off the bat, coming into the Bitcoin price, jumping into the shorter time frames, Bitcoin is absolutely breaking out, having a big buyback, and this is happening whereas most altcoins aren't necessarily doing a whole lot. We are seeing Bitcoin leading the show so far. Now when I'm looking at this on a higher time frame, the level that I was watching for when Bitcoin would potentially top was kind of the 60K level, 59 to 60K. This resistance right up here. And I'm still thinking that that's where we're going to end up seeing, Bitcoin potentially pull back. It doesn't have to stop, the uptrend, but seeing a pullback for Bitcoin would be healthy considering we've had such a big move to start this up to this point. We spent 180 days consolidating once we broke out at this 25K resistance, flipped it as support, and then that's what led us into this breakout. It's a bigger one than, normal cycles up to this point. If we're comparing the last bull run or even the one prior to that, it did take more time to get to these higher levels of price, but I think a lot of that's fueled with the ETF, a lot of that's fueled with the institutional demand, a lot of that's fueled with the retail money that's coming on board now. So a lot of the price could actually just be kind of intensified or over enhanced, I guess you could say. Now, as we rally up to this level, if we end up seeing a pullback, a decent sized pullback that would be, typical with prior cycles, if we were to come all the way back down to the main trend line that we've been building up to this point, we'd be looking at potentially like 35K at the low end, maybe like $37,500. That would be kind of where I would be looking at Bitcoin bottoming if we were to come all the way back down to revisit the trend line. I find it a little bit more likely we wouldn't do that, but you never know, guys. Anything is truly possible inside of these Bitcoin cycles. Maybe a shorter pullback where we only come back down to like the 40K level, something like this, before we do that next sort of breakout. We would still be distancing ourselves from that main trend line. We'd be building a little bit more of a steeper parabolic curve, but as we're getting closer to these prior all-time highs, I think that's more to be expected. Bitcoin has never went into a new all-time high this fast into a cycle, so if that's what starts happening, I do think that this cycle could lead towards maybe an early cycle top, because it would be much quicker in pace than anything else that we've seen. So I do think that that would result into something more of a shortened cycle. When we're looking at this on the higher time frames, the most bullish scenario is that we make a corrective phase, we come back down and revisit this trend line, and then we get closer towards maybe Q3, Q4 of this year before we get into a new all-time high type of move. That would put us in the same trajectory as prior cycles. That would mean that our Bitcoin halving would probably end up being more of a sell the news type of event, maybe a little bit more along the lines of what happened in that 2016 cycle, because we were starting our uptrend, right? And then we had just broken out, and then the Bitcoin halving happened here, and we made this final lower low, and then took all this time kind of reconsolidating before we broke out again. I wouldn't be surprised to see the same sort of thing play out. It could be a little bit shorter than what I have drawn here, but this is going to be pretty customary of what we would expect to see. A move up to this resistance, a pullback, probably a 20 to a 30% pullback. If we come to 60K, and we come back down to 40K, that's going to be like a 30-35% pullback. So it's important that we understand that the likelihood scenario of us seeing a correction is going to be a little bit higher, because we're still within the same time frames of a 4-year cycle, and historically speaking, this would be the quickest we've ever broken out. So most likely, if we follow your typical 4-year cycle, I think we go through a corrective phase relatively soon. However, if we go into maybe a shortened cycle where this thing just starts front running, it would behave a little bit differently. We might see a quicker breakout, and then us kind of consolidating right here at those all-time highs before that much bigger move starts. And we'd be closing the end of this year all the way up here at like 120, 150K. This would be the early cycle top prediction. If we were to follow this scenario, I think that this would lead to a blow off top, before a multi-year bear market would kind of follow after. Now, if we follow a normal 4-year cycle, then this would just be kind of lower, right? We would just come back down, revisit this trend line, and then we would start the move into a new all-time high. We don't want to see us go into a new all-time high this quick because, in my opinion, it would just lead towards a shortened cycle. Now, coming over here and looking at the total market cap, this is approaching my main resistance that I've been kind of watching for. Ever since we first started bottoming and reversing over here, I was figuring that we would rally up to this resistance before we saw some type of correction. I still think that that's the case. Once we rally up to about 2.2 to 2.1 trillion, from there, I would anticipate some type of a pullback. Now, like I said, guys, it doesn't have to come all the way back down to the main trend line that we kind of built to begin this cycle. That would be a pretty gnarly correction. It is possible, but based off the way that all of these dips have been bought up relatively quickly, the dips haven't been as big as prior cycles, and then once the dips happen, the price kind of instantly starts taking off. So I do think that that's going to be a parallel that we can look at moving forward, even for a further correction. If we see another correction, like I do think we will, most likely that dip ends up getting bought up a little bit quicker than most people expect. I think a lot of people will anticipate us coming all the way back down to this trend line and doing something like this. And it's possible, but I just don't think that that's the likely scenario. In the same ways that all of our dips have been bought up pretty quick up to this point, I do anticipate more of the same. Maybe something like this before we just see, another move into we'd be getting into the new all-time high territory on the next breakout. So looking at the total market cap, I do think that this is more or less what's in store for us throughout this year. Coming over here and looking at the altcoins, this is a very important chart because we've been talking about how this breakout and more or less retest of our entire bear market accumulation is very much the same as what we saw in that last cycle when we did the same breakout. We retested it. We spent more time in the last cycle retesting it before that breakout. So I am interested to see how this plays out. The difference between the two, once we broke out and retested, we just went straight into a new all-time high. When we rallied up to these prior resistance levels, we didn't really pull back. Like, it was just pretty much, quick selling and then all of the profit taking. And then all of the people that were getting out throughout these periods, they were pretty much phased out by all of the buyers that were stepping in. So when I come over here and look at this cycle, even though it looks exactly the same up to this point, as far as the accumulation and the breakout, I won't be surprised if this runs up here and then makes a correction and we do something like this. Because like I've been talking about, guys, if we are to see a correction in here, the altcoins are going to correct. Everything's going to kind of, correct back down shortly. We don't know the exact time in which we're going to see this correction, but assuming it's relatively soon, I won't be surprised to see our halving ending up being a short-term sell the news type of event like what we saw in 2016. Now, coming over here and looking at the final chart on today's video, this is Dogecoin, and the reason we're talking about this is because whenever this breaks out, it's always an indication that the retail money and really alt season as a whole is going to be starting to take off. And what I'm seeing playing out inside of Dogecoin is a full trend reversal. I can see it right now. Well, we've already been talking about this for quite a while now, but we've successfully broken out of all descending resistance. We've successfully made our first higher high, and now we're even seeing continuation from that point. So when I look at this, I think that Dogecoin is getting ready for that point, running all the way back up to this 15, 16 cent level. But looking at Dogecoin on a long-term basis, this is a long-term bottom formation, right? When this thing breaks out, it's not just going to come up to this level and kind of correct back down again. It's going to break out, and it's going to run all the way back up to the top of this lower high, being 35 cents. And that's kind of what I'm anticipating for Dogecoin. I don't know the exact way the price structure is going to look, but it will look something along the lines of this. I do think that we're due for a very big breakout very soon. And that's why, even though it looks like the market could pull back in here and we're approaching resistance, we have to remember that some of these other altcoins, they've been basing for so long, and they do look like they're at the point of starting a reversal back up to the upside. So when I see Dogecoin having such a long bear market, the amount of time that we've spent down inside of this accumulation from the peak low, we're at over 622 days. That's a long period of time for accumulation to take place. So because there's so much length of time in the accumulation itself, the breakout to the upside is going to also be a very big one. The longer the accumulation, the greater the expansion. So when I'm seeing this, I see the reversal of all of the altcoins. Because if Dogecoin is going to reverse, it shows that all of that altcoin money is starting to come back into the market. All of the retail money is starting to trickle back in, which is, to be expected with the ETF approval. A lot more eyeballs are on crypto than ever before. And so seeing all of the charts kind of playing out in this way, it's very encouraging because regardless of a correction, I want a correction just to be able to come in and buy more crypto. Simple as that. I also would like a correction just because I think it would give us a little bit more time to build a foundation of support before a much bigger move into a new all-time high, maybe at the end of this year to the beginning of 2025. If we follow a normal 4-year cycle, we're pretty much looking at a 3-year uptrend, right? So a 3-year uptrend for this cycle pretty much puts us right at the end of the year 2025. So that's the main focus that we're going to be watching for. However, if we see a shortened cycle where this thing really just starts, front running all of the prior bull runs, then at that point we'd be looking at maybe 120, 150K top, maybe even the end of this year if things get really crazy. It really revolves around what happens in the short term with Bitcoin. I lean more towards a correction. I lean more towards Bitcoin following a normal cycle. When I'm looking at the price action right now, it's looking a little bit parabolic. So, Bitcoin coming back down and giving everybody another opportunity to buy back in, giving the institutions more time to accumulate before they send this thing into a new all-time high just makes the most sense. However, we're just going to play it by what the market gives us. At the end of the day, nobody really knows, but we can play this market and give ourselves the best strategic advantage to profit long term. If you guys found value in this video, leave a like, comment, and subscribe. Hit the notification bell so you don't miss out on any of these updates. If you guys want to see how I'm investing long term, any altcoins I'm buying, selling, trading, and most importantly, how I'm going to be taking profits on my crypto long term. Links are in the description to go ahead and sign up on my website. From there, you're going to be able to get total access to my private group, all things that I'm doing with my portfolio long term. Thank you guys once again for the support. And with that being said, I'll catch you in the next one. As always, peace out.